All right, good morning on this Friday. Monday. I saw Dave. Monday, October the 28th, man. Wow. Everybody listening all over the SEC footprint, around the country and around the world. And we got a lot of expats and military that listen and watch this show. And thank you for your service as always. Hoorah! And we got one of your guys right here, West Point grad, Dave Tompkins, over in the low country, Beaufort, South Carolina. And everybody listening, I think my favorite part of America probably is the Florida Panhandle. L.A., there's dispute. L.A., is it Florida? Is it lower Alabama? But I got a lot of our fans and viewers and listeners down there. Everybody remember, smash that subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android or iPhone. Tell your friends, your family, your neighbors. And if you want to be a sponsor on this show, we have great opportunities. What we're especially good at, and I want to say this, Landers Ford, LandersFordMemphis.com, open Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m., 7 p.m. Service department opens 7 a.m. Monday through Saturday to 6 p.m. Listen, proud to have them rotated out there at the corner of Poplar and Houston Levee. So last week, we jump on board as a sponsor, get a call from a viewer. Who do I talk to out there? I said, talk to Brad Bellamy. 2 hours later, he goes, that was the easiest thing I've ever done. I just bought a brand new Ford Bronco. And then he got his ex-wife went out there and bought a brand new Ford Explorer from Landers. And now the daughter is going out there to get herself a new Expedition. Ain't this a great country? The power of the word and the message on sidelines. So feel free to reach out to us if you'd love to be a sponsor, because we know how to market. We know how to bring business to you. Dave, I was talking to Frank Duffy this morning as he reared his head from the carnage. The worst betting weekend I think any of us have had all year. I mean, paper bags are in vogue. You better think differently now, the way you pick games. I'll just tell you right now, it's the strangest thing I've ever seen. The Fighting Diego Pavias they lose 27-24 to Texas. We'll start from there and kind of bounce around the league.
Well, yeah, if you look at the box score and the statistics, Texas, completely manhandled them in terms of the stat sheet. But there you are, end of the game. Vanderbilt and Diego has a chance to win the game, just like they did against Alabama. And yeah. They are amazing. They head down to the Loveliest Village this weekend to play Auburn. That's going to be a really, very interesting game. I'm happy for Auburn for getting it done in Lexington last weekend. And then that Texas A&M game. I mean, LSU had complete control of the game. They pull Wegman, and then Marcel comes in. He only throws 2 passes the entire rest of the game, and they score. I think they score 4 or 5 touchdowns. I mean, just crazy. And it all started with the games at noon, and then it seemed like 43 hours of football on Saturday. I was exhausted on Sunday, and I demonstrated my exhaustion because I think I went 2-6 on my betting in the NFL.
Yeah, well, and I right now I had LSU to win. I felt good about that thing. And again, Marcel Reed, he's another kid out of Nashville, pretty damn good quarterback. Casey Goodjohn, a viewer out in Cleveland County, Texas, was texting me this morning with me. Watches the show every day. 20-year Marine, I might add. Great guy. Got 4 daughters. Awesome guy. Met him down at Orange Beach last summer, surf fishing. Man, he watches the show every day. We're going to bring in Lauren Meadows from Gator Bait Media. Lauren's a coach from Southern Ohio, Southwest Ohio. He knows he's coached. He writes for GatorBaitMedia.com, which is a big, big part of our show, obviously with Brendan and Buddy. Don't see Lauren yet, but you know what was crazy? I felt good about LSU at A&M until they switched the quarterbacks. That's the second time in 3 weeks I've been burned because I'm thinking Wigman's the guy, and I got burned because he came in and bailed him out against Missouri a few weeks ago in that beatdown. And then Saturday, they take out Connor Wigman, and they bring in Marcel Reed. Look, the way betting is now, depth charts. We always think, Lauren, good morning. How you doing? How's everybody doing? Am I right? Southwest Ohio or Southeast Ohio?
Southwest.
That's right. Those are
Yeah,
some tough ass people up in that part of the country.
Near the Dayton Flyers.
yeah, no doubt.
Hey, and he has confirmed that there is 6 aliens in the morgue there at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base there. He confirmed it, and I double dog dare anybody to defy that. But Lauren, this is Dave Tompkins.
Right, Pat, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great story, but Dave is part of our roundtable on Fridays, and now on Mondays we switch them around over in Beaufort, South Carolina. Just so you'll know, he's a Mountain Brook native, Alabama fan from birth, West Point graduate, and an MBA from Stanford. So he loves football coast to coast and everywhere in between. Can you make any sense out of what happened Saturday? I mean, it was 43 hours of college football, according to Dave. I think there was about 73. What a day.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great day. I mean, you had a lot of good games, culminated by the Texas A&M kind of beat down, inserting Marcel Reed into the scheme of things. You had Alabama with kind of their struggles and what's going on there. Vanderbilt put up a great fight again at home with Texas, kind of fought to the end, and then the nightcapper is what is the story going to be with Colorado? With the way that they're playing right now and some of those things. And as we move in to the cocktail party this week and the SEC, really starting to shape into form, it's just an interesting dynamic. I mean, for sure. I was never a big fan of Missouri. I kind of thought that was fool's gold. Basically, the fact that Florida should have beat Missouri last season at Como, and I mean,
you're right.
So it was a situation. If Graham Mertz doesn't get hurt, they probably win that football game. And I just never understood the infatuation from people with Missouri, and for Alabama to kind of rebound and drop to 0 on them. I mean, there was just a lot that unfolded. Now Ryan Day is coming into question with, struggling at home against Nebraska in a game that they easily could have lost. And so I think, we talked about it last week on the show, Rob, the parity that is starting to exist and just some of the surprises. It almost lends itself to think if it's the Georgia of 2 to 3 weeks ago, does Florida have a chance? If they come in and play and DJ Lagway can be dynamic and, Carson Beck, I think if Carson Beck gives the ball to Florida 2 or 3 times, and the way that Billy Napier has found a way to kind of sit on leads, it could be interesting, But like you said, it was a long day, culminated with a lot of stories. And like I said, at the end of the night, it was like, okay, how good is Colorado? Are they rounding into form? Obviously, they're a lot better than they were early in the season on both lines of scrimmage. And, it's it'll be interesting.
It will be. Dave, looks like you got a trimmer over there. Dave's getting so excited.
I'm just so excited. No, you look at Colorado's schedule, and they'll be favored the rest of the way, so they can finish 10-2. Mm-hmm. And Coach Prime will have established himself as a legitimate coach. He was Nick Saban was talking about on game day that they're buddies now, and I guess doing their Aflac commercials. And he said, I got an offensive coordinator and I got a defensive coordinator. I got a staff now, and we're going to be good. And they're demonstrating it on the field now. I mean, they're more than just his son and Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we're going to get into it about at 1:30. Kevin Skarbinski's going to join us from Birmingham, and there's the state of Alabama is wounded right now. But this Saturday, Auburn and Alabama both got wins. It's such an emotional game that we're playing. Lauren, you talk about, does Florida have a chance? Of course they do. And this past weekend was my worst weekend. I was 50-50. I only hit 50% of my games. I've had some where I've hit 8 out of 10 on the weekend. Saturday was embarrassing. When I go to the grocery store today, I will request paper and I will cut out eye holes. The one that got me, I thought Mississippi State was due for a breakout game, Lauren, and Arkansas went over there and absolutely. It was Ric Flair, Tojo Yamamoto, Plowboy Frazier, an ass beating, 58-25. Three of the top 10 highest performances offensively, yardage wise, for Arkansas in their history have occurred this year. I think Bobby Petrino is the offensive coordinator. Lauren, I mean, think about that.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Petrino has really the ability to take his football team and adapt it to whatever he wants to do offensively. He has that. I think that's his best ability is he can take any football team, any type of player, whether it be a pocket passer like Ryan Mallett or a runner like the young man he has now or Lamar Jackson, and really form the offense to what they do best. And his football teams are also always physical on offense. They always bring a certain level of physicality too, even though he would be known as kind of a wide open guy. When they run the football and they get downhill, it's a physical brand of football. And then his ability, we heard guys on many shows talk about it's not what you run, but it's when you call it. And his
Yes.
ability to time it up, dial it up, scheme it up at the right time, I think, speaks volume. And he and Sam Pittman, I think Sam Pittman is a humble enough guy, a
Yeah.
modest enough coach, and a guy that really, as long as the offensive line is playing well, I don't care what we really do on offense, and has really allowed Sam Pittman to kind of maybe break out and engage the entire football team because he knows he can lead the offense to Bobby Petrino. And so far so good. I thought it may be a situation where Pittman was kind of looking over his shoulder, but I think Petrino is at the point now where it's a lot easier to just show up, scheme them up, and call plays, and not have
Yeah.
to worry about guys and things like that. And Pittman is humble enough and very comfortable in his own skin to
Yeah.
where he's like, "Hey, man, it's working. Let's do it. Let's keep doing it." And it's working for Arkansas for sure.
Well, buddy, I want to ask your experience in this stuff, and thank you for filling in, Brendan, on special assignment today. Buddy Martin, Wilton, from down in well, actually the Panhandle, Panama City, which I absolutely love the Florida Panhandle, and you're going to be hearing a lot about the Panhandle. In fact, if I had a country music band, I might name it the Panhandlers. Just saying that, buddy. Good morning, guten tag, buenos dias. Tell me this right now. You've interviewed a lot of people over the years, but what Buddy's like a mentor to me in terms of being a point guard. You just talked about being humble with Sam Pittman. How hard is it for a coach to give control and not worry about who gets the credit, in your opinion?
Depends on the coach. I know I'm having internet issues this morning as well. As you can see, I'm lagging behind here, so I'm
Come
kind of all
on,
over the place here. But if you can hear me, I hope you can.
sound great.
It is very much an issue for a lot of coaches. Yet, by the same token, that ego can work for you. We've seen coaches over the years. I just saw a great interview with Barry Switzer of Paul Feinbaum. There's no higher ego in the world, no bigger than his. And yet he was absolutely brilliant at 88 years old and all the things he's done. And when you look at his record and what he has accomplished, he's one of the great coaches who never gets talked about. Don't particularly like Barry. Maybe that's the reason. But the ego is such a big part of it. I think that the main thing is every great coach, if you ask Barry Bryant, if you ask who's around, if you ask anybody, they'll tell you they believe it's the kids who do it. It's the kids who make it happen. If you can trust them, they can trust you. Together, you can do great things. I think Petrino's play calling is brilliant. The rest of it, he's had to work on. I think Billy Napier now is learning about his humility, learning about what it's like. That part of it, I think, Lauren may disagree with me on this. I think he's beginning to understand that part of it. But
Yeah.
there's a fine line between humility and actually ability to manage your team, and it all goes hand in hand. Every great coach has the respect of his players, sometimes through humility, sometimes through hard work and kick ass. So Everybody does it differently, and I don't think there is one size fits it all.
Well, Dave, you talk about that humility and not worrying about who gets the credit. I think that's the number one characteristic of leadership and giving people and trusting people. And I think, and then we do want to get to Blind Squirrel Sports. Allegedly, there's some kind of sporting event happening Saturday down in Duval County, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Ham's Beer should be the sponsor, Dave.
Well, I'll go to my day job in investing. I've always said about entrepreneurs and startups that entrepreneurs should have an enormous ego about their startup. But they should be careful with that and not let that ego pervade to the ego about themselves. But I want them to absolutely have an enormous ego about their startups. And I think the same potentially applies in college football where, yeah, you want a coach to have an enormous ego about their program. And I think we saw that with Nick Saban, probably the clearest, most recent example. But yes, Duval County, there'll be some cocktailing, and I think we're going to have a game. I really do. I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I do too, Lauren. The Fighting Napiers. I think he thinks so much. Paralysis by analysis is what I call it. But DJ Lagway, that guy raises everybody's level of intensity. Have you had a chance to talk to the guy?
Yeah, I have. I actually, not without getting into his, he and I have spent some time at a couple other sporting events, and I have had an opportunity not to interview him, but just to be around him
Yeah.
as a young man, and very very engaging, very humble. Definitely about his business, laser focused, and somebody who is doing all the right things in the locker room as the top recruit in the country, coming in humble, dialed in, and really has assimilated himself. And I think, particularly as a quarterback, when you can come in and I mean, he really learned this from Graham Mertz is coming in and being one of the guys, being part of this whole situation, being humble, saying and doing the right things, but also getting himself out there publicly where it's not anomalous to see DJ Lagway in Gainesville. You see him at Raising Canes, you see him at basketball, you see him at softball, and I think that's really helped him kind of already. We talk about it, Rob, on the show, kind of gain some equity with the team
Yeah.
and with the fans and really get into it. So yeah, I've spent some time with him and very impressed with the young man. I mean, just
Yeah.
a solid guy and seems to have a nice grasp of what they want to do offensively. Shows a lot of patience. He was 7 of 14 in his first SEC start. It
Yeah.
wasn't brilliant, but it was for 200 and some yards. So he's throwing
Yeah.
but he was almost taking what the defense was giving him and then, really throwing the ball away when he needed to, but hit the ones that he needed.
Yeah.
But yeah, spending time with him and his as a young man and seeing him operate, I mean, yeah, definitely impressive. Absolutely.
Dave, you look from afar at any player in this league. Talon Green for Arkansas. He had a big game Saturday at Mississippi State. Sam Pittman, you talked about him. He's such a humble guy. He lets his coaches coach. I think, they're 5-3 right now. Look at the end of the schedule for the Razorbacks. They've got Ole Miss Saturday, then they've got off. They've got Texas at home, Louisiana Tech at home, and at Missouri. Arkansas could finish 8-4, 9-3.
I think one of the storylines at the end of the season is going to be how Florida and Arkansas were kind of, down on the canvas, and they got back up. They got the standing 8 count, got back up, and they won the final rounds of the fight, and they ended up strong. And then here you have Missouri and Ole Miss that started off gangbusters, and everyone has them in the playoffs, and it's Lane Kiffin's breakout year, and they're kind of getting progressively worse. I think Arkansas is going to win this weekend. I think Florida. I don't think Florida's going to beat Georgia, but I think they're going to give them a hell of a fight. And I'd take Florida in the points. Another game that's really fascinating to me, a trap game, is taking place in Columbia, South Carolina, and that's A&M traveling to play South Carolina. I think it's going to be a really, really fascinating. I think there's going to be at least one upset in the SEC this weekend.
All right, rapid fire. We're going to go real fast. Lauren, I'm going to keep you, if you can, till about 27, 28 after. I know you got a big day. You're a corporate tycoon, a baron of business down in Gainesville. And that's what you call Alachua County. Am I pronouncing it properly? I've been there a few times.
Alachua.
Alachua, okay.
Don't ask the Ohioan. Let me get back to you on that.
I got you.
Yeah.
But I will say this. This is what's so much fun on this show, hitting all 16 of them. All right, I got to ask you about Texas A&M at South Carolina. The Fighting Beamers, Shane Beamer.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm biased because I love his dad. Because, my brother-in-law played at Tech. I got two nieces and a nephew that graduated from Virginia Tech. Sister, they live in Roanoke, the Star City, I might add, up there in southwest Virginia. What do you think about A&M's quarterback situation? Is Wegman done? Is Reed the man, the answer? Casey Goodjohn out in Cleburne County, Texas, he runs too much. And I said, yeah, he better be careful.
Yeah, I think Marcel Reed is the quarterback going forward. I do. I think they'll make the change. And if you look at where they've been the most efficient as a football team was in the second half against LSU and in the game against Florida. I think that's where they've been the most efficient. And I think that's where they've played their best football, spreading the ball around, things like that. Yeah, I think after, what was it, 4 series, 4 touchdowns, the way that Marcel Reed basically came in, kind of in relief, but handled that. And, just the impression of going into the swamp in your first SEC start and first career start and playing as well as he did and having a command. Unfortunately, no disrespect to Connor Wegman, but I think, I'm not a big make the switch kind of guy. I'm more
I know.
Let the guy kind of figure it out, but sometimes the writing's on the wall. And I think Texas A&M is at the precipice of really getting this thing into the mix where they're talking about going to Atlanta, making a run, and then putting themselves in position. Probably not. They could sneak into that 6th spot if they win the SEC and one of those top 6 and, where you're getting that bye and that kind of thing. So I think that, I would I would at least make the change for the game going to South Carolina. I would let him start that game. And then you can always come back to Wigman if you have to.
Yeah. Dave? Yeah.
I absolutely agree with Lauren. I think he's the momentum right now. He gives the defensive coordinator a completely different look. Hard to prepare for. Then you can go back to Wegman, and then it's a more standard offense. Lauren's point is I think it's brilliant, and I think that's the way they can win in Columbia. I do think it's going to be a trap game, but I think that Texas A&M is going to prevail. And and then they got pretty smooth sailing the rest of the way until they host Texas. But I think that's a winnable game as well. A lot of upside for A&M right now, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to bring Kevin Skarbinski in here in just a minute. And Lauren, before you go, I want your thoughts, just real quick, on Ole Miss at Arkansas. We touched on it earlier. Mm-hmm. We talked about that defensive front. Ole Miss was number 1 in the nation against the run. That was a big game. Here's how big this stuff is. Oklahoma fans, Yancey Porter reported this last week from Rebel Yell Hotline. OU fans, a lot of them did it. They were paying $30,000 to rent houses and condos for the Thursday, Friday, Saturday weekend. They were so fired up about going to Oxford and the Grove and all. Ole Miss is down 14-10 at the half. They keep struggling. They're pulling out of the driveway going 20 when they live in the middle of I-95. They need to be doing about 100.
Right.
Look, Fayetteville, this is the 11 a.m. game, and it does favor the visiting team. Kind of close out with this, and then I'll see you tomorrow night on the Color TV show that we do, the Buddy Martin Show, which is more fun than – you got to watch that show, people. It's on our channel.
Absolutely. Tune in, basically Monday through Thursday, the Buddy Martin Show, some of the best definitely I would say if you talk about a show that is tailored towards the Florida Gators, it's the best around.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
nothing
But,
like it.
but yeah, I mean, if I would say this to Ole Miss fans is go back and look at the Tennessee game. Remember the Volunteers, so to speak, and how high flying Tennessee was, and Arkansas kind of putting the towel ringer on, kind of stopping the flow of Tennessee, and I think it could be the same thing. I mean, for Ole Miss. I mean, something just isn't. I don't know if it's what do we hang our hat on? Are we running the football the way we need to? Are we getting the football to the right people? It's almost
Yeah,
like sometimes you can be too cute offensively. You can get into the point where you don't want to say, "Hey, we're leaning on this guy too much," or "We're leaning on the other." And it's something there. And then defensively, they're good at times, but they've got some people from some other schools, and you can kind of guess who it is.
yeah,
And you see the same thing you saw in Gainesville from some of those people sometimes.
yeah,
And like I'm going inside when I shouldn't be, or I'm not
yeah,
playing as hard every single play. And maybe that lends itself to when you bring in transfers, they're not bought into the fabric of what's going on the Grove, or
mm-hmm.
maybe that paycheck coming in from that collective is.
Yeah,
But this is not a bunch. And I told somebody this. I think I said on show when I went to they were playing Georgia Southern,
yeah.
and I
Remember
said
that.
this. I said defensively, and in the SEC, if you're gonna win the whole thing, you gotta be at a certain place defensively.
Yes.
And I said I didn't see a defense that seemed to play with the savagery that you see from top SEC defenses. And you and I both know sometimes that dinner comes out and the recipe ain't the same way you want it to be on offense.
Yeah.
That recipe didn't end up the way it was supposed to be. That cake is a little flat. It didn't rise like it was supposed to.
Yeah, that's right.
And you got to have that defense come in and hold everybody off till dinner is served. And it just, they just, and so, you got Arkansas with that dude calling the plays and Taylor Green running the show. And that oh shucks, it's just us boys coach running the show.
Yeah. It is. Look, Lauren, great stuff as always. And just realized there's an error on the screen behind Lauren. I love this show. That's Blind Squirrel Sports, man. I love it. Lauren, have a great one. We'll do it again tomorrow night. Catch us tomorrow night. We're going to be talking a lot of Florida, Georgia, and SEC on that awesome Buddy Martin show. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy.
We're going to bring in Kevin Skarbinski, the Birmingham lead. Kevin, one of the best sports writers around. And what I love about Kevin is he won't back down. Tom Petty. Yeah, that's right. He wrote that song. Sang that song. Kevin, you're down in Birmingham.
You don't want me to sing, Rob. I guarantee you.
That's right. No, we got two Birminghamians. What do you call them? Birminghamians, Birminghites. But look, Dave Tompkins, Kevin Skarbinski. What a weekend. What a season we're having. And you and I were on X. I just made a comment. Jarquez Hunter, we hadn't talked about Auburn yet. 278 yards, kid out of Philadelphia, Mississippi, Neshoba County. Many years I have run the Heart of Dixie Triathlon there when they have the Neshoba County Fairgrounds, and we run 2 laps around that track. That is a beautiful part of Mississippi up in the hill country. Jarquez is now –
Isn't Marcus Dupree from Philadelphia as well?
He is. And Jarquez is – I call him Cowboy. My son knows him. He come over to the Sigma New House and drank a few road sodas. Everybody loves that guy. Kevin, kind of give us the state of the SEC, starting with Auburn, Alabama, whatever's on your mind.
Well, it was nice to see, as I wrote in my column today in the lead, in this state, but both fan bases needed a win in the worst way.
Yes.
After Auburn hadn't won since the middle of September, it felt like forever, I'm sure, for the Auburn family.
It did.
To get that win in Kentucky. Look, Kentucky's a bad football team at this point, but it doesn't matter. When you haven't won in as long as they hadn't, a win of any kind against anyone is a welcome relief. So that was good to see for those guys. And nice to see that they recognize that their best player is their tailback, Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah.
Still blows my mind. He's averaging 15 carries a game.
Yeah.
On a team that has 5 losses and has had a realistic chance to win late in the fourth quarter 4 of those games.
Yeah.
And we can go back and recite play after play, decision after decision, call after call when they were at the goal line and they did not give the ball to Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah.
Which is coaching malpractice, if you ask me. But it all came together on Saturday, so kudos to the Tigers. And Alabama, after losing 2 out of 3 and coming home with their tail between their legs from Knoxville, they needed not just to win over a badly beat-up Missouri team, but they needed to assert some dominance.
Yeah.
It took them a while. They didn't score their first touchdown until inside of 2 minutes in the first half. But in the second half, Alabama played like people expect Alabama to play. And they did so kind of the opposite of Auburn. Instead of their all Milroe all the time offense, they spread the ball around. They got more guys involved. They got the tailbacks more involved.
Yeah.
They didn't ask Jalen Milroe to be Cam Newton, which he's not, which no one is. No one needs to carry that level of load of the offense that they'd asked Jalen Milroe to do up to that point. So much more effective. The Alabama defense under Kane Womack is getting better. Certainly looked much better in that game. Again, Missouri is badly beat up. Brady Cook was not healthy going into the game, got knocked out early. The backup quarterback situations in the SEC, just from watching Missouri and Kentucky on Saturday, yikes. There's a definite need. And then you look at Texas A&M, completely different situation. Their backup quarterback, a lot of people think should be starting. So it's again, just from in this state, the sun came up a little brighter on Sunday morning for the first time in a while.
It did. And Dave, we were going back and forth during the Alabama-Missouri game. I had Bama to win. I thought Missouri would cover. And that line went from 18 to 13 to 17. I guess, Brady Cook, I admire his courage, but, him coming back in the Auburn game to get them to win probably hurt them long-term, especially against Alabama it did. But what about those running backs, Justice Haynes, and not trying to make Jalen Milroe stand in the pocket? That's not who he is.
Yeah, I think it was the first really good half since the first half of the Georgia game. I mean, they had the first half against Georgia looked like a playoff team, and then they looked like a team that doesn't deserve to go anywhere, in the interim, and then they have a great second half. They got the off week now before going to Baton Rouge. I think they have a great opportunity now to sort of reset, and if they can prevail over LSU. And win out, then they probably sneak into the playoff. Jerry Palm from CBS has them in the playoff right now. I think it's a 10 seed, and it's entirely possible. But they have to win out and probably get a little help. I think if they're going to make the playoff. The last projection I saw had Indiana not in the playoff, and they're undefeated right now, and can have. They could probably finish either undefeated or with one loss. And so, do you keep them out and put a 2-loss SEC team in? It's going to be fascinating. I mean, that final selection is just going to be wow. The media, Twitter, everything is just going to be on fire that day.
Kevin, interesting point, and give credit to SEC Network. Chris Doring and Peter Burns put this out. Since 2010. Alabama, that was their 8th shutout versus a ranked team in the AP top 25. That's more than 3 times the rest of the teams out there that did that. It's just that one school. I got to ask you, Kevin, and let's talk about, and Ken Capps is going to come on here in a minute. That's why I'm glad you're going to be on, because he covers Texas A&M out in Dallas. But that game, Vanderbilt, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to Clark Lee? Because he's a very he's the Telly Savalas of football coaches. I mean, he's so cool and so calm, but there's a fire burning in that guy. And I saw it at media days. He's got his guys there now. Diego Pavia may have really started something.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to him one-on-one. I've been around him at media days, and I remember thinking his first appearance at SEC media days, I thought he seemed a little out of touch with reality. I thought his confidence was so strong.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about, Rob.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
he came in there talking that he wasn't there to make Vanderbilt respectable, to win a game here or there, spring an upset now and again. He was there to make Vanderbilt the best football program in the country. And he said things like that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were looking at each other like, is this guy for real? Well, look at the product on the field now. And I think he is very much for real. And bringing in the New Mexico State contingent, led by Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill and their offensive coordinator, et cetera, was a brilliant offseason move. And Auburn better not feel too good about itself this week. All Hugh Freeze has to do is put on the film of last year's New Mexico State game to know what Diego Pavia is capable of in Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Yeah, and Jerry Kill, that coach, Dave, Jerry Kilkowski, I think is his name. He's had some health issues, 174 victories as a coach. Someone told me, a Vanderbilt friend of mine said, Diego, that's his inspiration. He goes, this man I know through and how he lives. So it's a pretty cool story there in Nashville.
I think me with my basketball analogies, and the basketball analogy I would draw is the former Butler coach, Brad Stevens, who looked all of like 12 years old when he coached Butler, and took him to two consecutive final games, and Butler just beating one quality opponent after another with a roster that couldn't compare to the teams they were beating, but you just had a super smart coach. And what happened to Brad Stevens? He's now the best basketball executive in the NBA with the Celtics. And I think that's what we're seeing with Clark Lee, this quiet sort of burn and confidence, and the confidence to say, you may have more talent on the field, but we have enough talent. We got a great leader at our quarterback position, and we can win. And we get in the fourth quarter, and we know we can win, just like Butler in the final 5 minutes of a game during March Madness. Same thing. And yeah, I think to Kevin's point, Auburn better prepare this week because Vanderbilt will be ready.
Yeah. Kevin, you look at Peyton Thorne, it's been a struggle with him. Hugh Freeze, does he call the plays or does he, whatever? What going forward do you see Auburn possibly being able to do in these last 4 games? What's the best scenario you see?
I think the absolute best, realistically, is 2-2. I'm not sure they can win 2 games, but if they didn't learn a few things about their offense on Saturday night, and primarily that Jarquez Hunter is the guy they need to ride.
Yeah.
Who was it? John McKay, the old USC coach, was asked about feeding one of his tailbacks, 30, 35 times a game. And he said, look, the ball's not that heavy to carry.
I love that.
And Jarquez is not one of Terry Bowden's minuscule tailbacks. He's not Markeith Cooper. He can handle punishment. He can handle a heavier workload than 15 carries a game. So they've got to feed him. Now, you can't just line up and run the ball. They're not that good up front to be able to just overpower people, especially the people they have left to play, those last 2 games in particular with Texas A&M and Alabama. So you have to be somewhat balanced. Peyton Thorne has to make better decisions. Those receivers have to continue to grow up, the young ones. And who knows? Because they've been in games. That's what's so disappointing about this Auburn team.
Yeah.
Is they're not getting run week after week. They're putting themselves in position to lose and to win and finding ways to lose.
Yeah.
Which can be very, very debilitating emotionally and mentally and from a confidence standpoint. But to their credit, they showed up on Saturday night. They took advantage of a bad team.
Yeah, they did. And you look, guys, at this league, how tough it is. I go back 1997. Auburn played Tennessee for the SEC championship over in Atlanta. Auburn's leading rusher in that game, Kevin, you were covering the Tigers as the beat writer, I believe was Rusty Williams, a tailback out of Moncks Corner, South Carolina. He had 267 yards for the season. That's because Damian Craig out of Blunt ran it a lot. And you had guys like, Markeith Cooper, who was out of Liberty City down in Miami. He was about 5'5", but tough as nails. I'm telling you. The Lizard, yeah.
Shades of Lionel James.
Yeah, and who was out of Albany, Georgia, Daughtery High School at maybe 5'6", 5'7", but I remember seeing him in high school in 1979, November 10th. Auburn beat Mississippi State 14-3. He was outside the locker room. He had on a leather jacket. Looked like George Patton's medals, man. It's like he was slumping forward. He was track and field was his sport. But guys, I want to ask y'all now about Tennessee. What do you think about Tennessee? They've got Kentucky Saturday. How good is Nico Iamaleava, and how hard is it to learn on the job as a QB in this league?
Well, that's one thing, the expectations that we have for these guys. We know more about players when they enter college than ever before because of the explosion of recruiting services, just the explosion of media, social media, guys putting out their own highlights, putting out huddle tapes. The best players don't have to do that, of course. Someone does that for them. But we know so much about them, so they arrive with so much hype. And look, there's an adjustment period. There's an adjustment period for coaches. Ask Kalen DeBoer about that, what he's experienced this year in Tuscaloosa. Yeah. And look, let's go back to the Alabama game. That really shouldn't have been close. How many Tennessee receivers were behind Alabama DBs in that game? And Nico just did not hit them. He finally did hit a couple. One that throw he made, I don't know if you guys remember, he was rolling to his right, may have been a third down, and he hit his receiver over the top, inside the 10. That's as good a throw as I think I've seen all year. In that situation, given the stakes, given the pressure, and he threw an absolute dime in a perfect position. So he's capable. He has the skills, but he's still young. He's still learning. And that was a huge confidence booster, I would imagine, for him and the Vols in that game against Alabama.
Yeah. Dave, you look at Nico, where do you rank him, what you've seen? So let's say compare him to another first-year guy, DJ Lagway at Florida.
I think that's a hard question.
It is.
Today I'll say Nico. Tomorrow I'll say DJ. I think the jury's still out. I think you look at how Tennessee's schedule concludes, having to go. I believe they have to go both to Georgia and to that snake pit now known as Nashville. I mean those are two losable games for Tennessee. And so and also winnable games too. But I think the jury's out on Nico, and I think the jury's out on Tennessee right now.
You know, it's interesting. Somebody put out on X, are we in Austin or Nashville? Again, it's always the visiting team, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas in this case, and the Vandy fans, the students over in the corner, and they're in a big city. But that, even though everybody that plays against them has the majority of the crowd, Kevin, it's a tough place to play. One thing about Tennessee that is underrated with them is their damn defense. And so, let's bring Ken Capps in here, Football Writers Association of America. And by the way, Dave, we'll be doing a lot of basketball when Kevin comes on this show. U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame inducted April of 23 at the Final Four in Houston. The only sports writer ever in the great state of Alabama to earn that honor. And I say earn it. And he's from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, Troy graduate, Florida Masters, and beat writer for Auburn, the Birmingham News, the Birmingham Lead, Scarborough Knows. Keep on, keeping on, keep writing, Kevin. I love it. Ken Capps, jump in here. A lot of great pictures from you over the weekend, you and your daughter. Ain't nothing better in the world than being a great dad. I just say that, and I know Kevin is, and you talked about it with your daughter down there at the pumpkin patch in Texas. But I'm sure during that time you took a sneak peek at the Texas Vandy game. Did you expect a full 60 like what you saw. Damn, like Dave calls it, that new snake pit in Nashville, First Bank Stadium. God.
Well, first of all, Saturday, I was watching the whole Texas Vandy game. It was Sunday that I was at the pumpkin patch with my daughter. There's no way I'd miss a Texas game or a A&M game or Oklahoma game for a pumpkin patch. Let's just get that right out of the way.
My apologies.
No, but first of all, I got to congratulate the Texas Longhorns for avenging their 13-12 loss to Vandy in 1928. That's the last time they played in that snake pit called Vanderbilt. And so they avenged that loss on Saturday. But boy, I don't think anybody thought it was going to be the nail biter it was. I mean, Texas came out there, jumped out to an early lead. Quinn Ewers completed 17 passes in a row at one point, and Texas was just cruising. And then, comfortable halftime lead, everything's going fine. And then, ironically, it was the offensive line that turned out to really be the stinker in this game. Over 10 penalties for over 100 yards, all these holding calls and false starts that, one of them brought back a touchdown, kept making the drives longer. Next thing you know, Vandy's back in it. Next thing you know, it comes down to an onside kick to decide if Texas is going to, hold on to the win or not.
Yeah.
So, Texas does not look like a top 5 team to me right now. I saw that, in some places, well, they're still in the playoff for sure. But boy, that Texas A&M game there on November 30th in College Station, this continues to loom even larger than it did. But hey, let's not forget, Texas still has to play Florida, still has to play Kentucky. So there's no gimmies in the SEC, as we like to say.
And they got to go to Arkansas.
Oh God, yes. How can I forget Arkansas? Sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe I've been trying to wipe it out of my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kevin, Dave, feel free to walk around. The wheels are up. We are in the air. The smoking sign and the unfasten your seatbelt signs are on. This is anything goes Monday.
Well, that's a great point, Ken. And Steve Sarkisian certainly understood that the SEC is different. If you play someone like Georgia, and then you turn around and play what in the past used to be a gimme against Vanderbilt. It's not a gimme anymore, certainly. And it is just a different animal week in and week out. That's what I think people from other conferences don't understand, who cover other conferences, coach in other conferences, play in other conferences, that when you have to go back to back to back in some of these places against some of these teams, it just wears on you. That's why everybody's beat up. That's why we're seeing so many backup quarterbacks in different situations getting opportunities to play, because you just get banged up. Everybody's banged up now going into November.
Yeah. Well, and Dave, go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say, too, if you look at it from the other side, Texas had a pick 6 called back because of a roughing the passer call. And it's, the way I look at it, I mean, again, I look at these games objectively. This is week 8. Texas has got to get all these penalties cleaned up. And for the offensive line, which from day one, from all the magazines, of course, how, those things are written in February, but, all the magazines highly touting the Texas offensive line, the defensive line, as being tops in the country. And they've played that way for most of the year. But for it to be this late in the season and still getting false starts and still getting all these dumb holds when the offense is clicking, just takes both sides out of rhythm. And then the next thing you know, you've got a scrappy Vanderbilt that's never going to give up, that's always going to play hard. And here we are. It's and then again, Texas was still okay when it was 27-17. But then next thing you know, like Vandy gets that late touchdown. It's 27-24. Oh my God. And again, I was sitting there myself, with my daughter, and we're saying, can you believe it's boiling down to an onside kick with just a little over a minute to play?
Yeah. Dave, did you see that coming?
Well, the point I was going to make is I think what's going to be interesting to see is that in previous years, the conference championships, and then there's a month that goes by between the playoff or the 14 playoff or a bowl game, and so everyone has a chance to get healed and get back to 100%. Now it's 2 weeks, and between the conference championships and the first round of the playoffs. And the SEC is just beating each other up right now, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how the SEC fares in the playoff, because they're going to be more banged up than the team or teams from certainly from the Big 12 and even the Big 10 and ACC. So that's one of the things I'm going to be watching, and I wonder what sort of implications that's going to have on scheduling. But you can't. It's hard to schedule around that. That's just what's so compelling about the SEC is just how strong it is relative to the other conferences.
Kevin,
I want to jump in there and go back to something Dave said earlier about the playoff. I think this next month we're going to see more jockeying for position. We're going to see more teams rising and falling in the polls. There are going to be upsets. There are going to be games we didn't see coming. I think the final 12 at the end of November, after championship weekend in December, is going to look a lot different than the 12 would look right now in the playoff. This is going to be, I think, as fun a month of November in terms of the national championship chase as we may have ever seen. Certainly, maybe since back to that crazy year of 2007.
Oh, I agree.
Completely agree.
I even saw a potential playoff scenario this morning, and of course, everything could change. But wouldn't this be crazy that A&M and Texas play there November 30th, and by this scenario, they can come right back around and play on December 20th or 21st. Now, would that not just be nuts? Okay, that would just be nuts. And it could even happen, depending on the schedule, they could play them again up in College Station. So 2 games in a row in College Station. That would just blow the roof off. That would blow the roof off of the state of Texas, I did like somebody's comment, though, about thank you, whoever wrote that comment. You're so right. You never have to worry about me throwing water bottles at you or anybody else on the field. Thank you. I
got to ask you, Ken. You told me before the season, you said Texas fans at DKR Memorial Stadium have typically gotten up really big, jacked up, crazy, naked people in the stands going crazy, putting horns on their heads twice a year. And now every time an SEC team comes to town, it's like, the circus. I think the grind of the SEC, I say this, I'm going to draw a picture. It's like a workout. You've got 12 sprints. You got to do 3 400s, and you got to do, 4 400s, 4 800s, and 4 200s, okay? And you've got 90 seconds in between them, and you got a time that you got to hit on every one of them. So, you talk about Auburn. Yeehaw, you beat Kentucky. Here comes Vandy. Thank you, sir. May I have another? That's where we are. Thank you, sir. May I have another? That's the grind of the SEC is unlike anything that we've seen. Dave, when you were in the Army, the summer camp up there at West Point, that was a little different than what you were doing back in Mountain Brook, I'm sure. But you figured it out. But it kicked your ass until you.
Well, you have to march back from Lake Frederick, and okay, Beast Barracks is over, and then 3 or 4 days later, school started. How do
you like calculus now, friend?
Yeah, but that is the SEC. It's the grind, and I'm really curious to see what sort of impact it has. I'm repeating a point I've already made, but what sort of impact it has on the playoff. Yeah. Both Kevin and Ken have talked about these. Just you could have never thunk it up scenarios that can happen, in the playoffs and teams facing each other again. Some team we haven't even talked about, a team that's not in the conversation right now, ends up in the playoffs, maybe even, hosts the first round game. We just don't know. All we have to do is just turn on our TVs throughout the month of November and watch and enjoy, and then, talk about it on Mondays like we do.
Yeah.
Well,
We
look,
don't even know, Rob.
here's another game, guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I just wanted to say, guys, let's talk about this other game. That the other game that this really captivated my attention on Saturday, right after the Texas game, is how about Marcel Reed coming in for Connor Wigman and just destroying LSU. I hope Frank Duffy is okay today.
I checked with him. He's staying inside.
Because and that's here's another quarterback I think he's got to stay in there. I think Professor Elko should know that coming in. I mean, they were not moving the ball with Connor Wegman, and it was just a disaster. And then all of a sudden, you have Reed come in, go on 5 drives, and score 31 points. I mean, it's hard to quiet that A&M crowd, and they were quiet as church mice up there. And you know what happened? You know what happens when A&M scores? The guys in the core get to kiss their dates. There was no kissing going on there at A&M in the second half. So
then they got crazy.
Yeah. So they got all kinds of kissing going on up there. Is my point. So I mean, I'm making the point there. What Dave said. A&M may turn this thing on its heels. Think about this: the first time since A&M joined the conference that they are 5-0 in the SEC.
Yeah, Kevin, looking at that, Ole Miss has never been to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Who gets there first, A&M or Ole Miss? And this year, both of them are in the hunt. Your prediction?
A&M has the inside track right now.
Yeah.
Because they're the only team that's undefeated in the league. And who would have thunk that back in July? That when we get to November, there'd be one team undefeated in the conference, and it would be the Aggies in their first year under Mike Elko. And Ken, I'm telling you, that's the way that game flipped when Marcel Reed came in. That's one of the most electric performances by a backup quarterback I think we've ever seen. And if he's not the starting quarterback, someone might have to do a little examination of Mr. Elko and ask him what's going on, because that was incredible. I've watched Marcel Reed play 2 games extensively this year. What he did to Florida was unbelievable. He was so good that day. I think Vince Young, I know this is probably blasphemy, Ken, in the state of Texas, but when I look at Marcel Reed, I see Vince Young Jr. The skinny leg, the skinny calves, the quick burst ability, his explosiveness. He doesn't throw it like Vince Young did when Vince really got what should have been a Heisman year his last year, and he made up for it obviously in the national championship game. Got his revenge on the Trojans from USC in that unbelievable Rose Bowl. But man, that guy's electric. That guy is electric. So I want to know, Ken, how crazy is it going to be on November 30th if that game in College Station, Texas at Texas A&M, first of all, is for position? What if is it even possible? I haven't scenarioed this. Is it possible they could meet again in the SEC championship game?
Yeah, Is it?
They could play 2 weeks later.
Yes.
No, a week later. I'm sorry, a week later in Atlanta.
Right. Sure.
How crazy is that? Yeah.
That is so crazy. And of course, that game is always played. I've been to that game a gazillion times growing up.
Let me say something real quick. Dave, you got to check out. Awesome stuff, Dave. We'll do it again later this week. Love the insight. Craziest season I can ever remember. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be on. Little amateur me amongst all these Hall of Famer pros. It's awesome. So I'm very grateful to be on the show, Rob. Thanks so much.
Always, man. Cannot do it without the team. Hey, guys, the thing that Kevin, you just talked about this. This almost happened in 2017 when Auburn, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia were all there. Had Auburn won in Atlanta, they would have played. Golly, they could have played Clemson 3 times that year. I got to ask you, both of y'all, Mike Elko, there's a picture this morning of Mike Elko shaking hands with Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly looks like here in Elko's just this behemoth of a man. He's a big guy. He's where is he, a Cornell or Dartmouth grad? He is really smart. Have either one of y'all had a chance to sit down and talk to him? You know what I keep saying about him? The last guy that won big at Duke and came to the SEC was Steve Spurrier.
Yep.
And look at Mike Elko. The thing I get about him is how calm he is. I know I get a little excited during this show, but damn, it is so much fun. But that's big. That resonates throughout that team. That's what I think.
No,
Well,
I agree
what
with
he's done
you.
in his first year is really impressive. There's no question about that. And as Ken pointed out, it's amazing that for the first time since they've been in the SEC, as talented as they've been, and they've had some really good teams in that time, that they're 5-0 in the conference for the first time. That tells you a lot about Mike Elko.
Ken, you out there in Texas are covering Texas A&M and OU. I was texting Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. That's one of my favorite people. He is one of the most genuinely nice people.
Good egg.
And
good egg.
He's, as they say in the country, he's a good egg, or Coach Dye used to say, he's a good one. Can we get a common spelling on that one? But I mean, the A&M people, you can say a lot of things, but God, they are so loyal.
Yep.
There's 20,000 students in the College of Engineering at Texas A&M. That's where all that money comes from out there. Oil engineer, petroleum engineering, mechanical engineering. But I'm going to throw this to both of you. Start with Ken first, some rapid fire here for a few minutes before we get out of here. How fun is it for OU in Texas? What are you hearing out there for them being part of the SEC, and how they like their road trips so far? How do you like me now?
Well, so far it hasn't been very fun for OU at all. I mean,
that was a dumb question on my part.
They
wanted Auburn.
They enjoyed their trip to Auburn. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Well, everybody's been enjoying their trip to Auburn lately, but that was going to be. See, that was the third thing I was going to bring up. I wanted to bring up Ewers, I wanted to bring up Marcel Reed, and then I wanted to bring up Jackson Arnold. I mean, gosh darn, here he's back. Jackson Arnold from here in the Metroplex. And, here he was, the 5-star #1 quarterback recruit in the country a couple of years ago. He was the franchise for A&M, for OU, completely given up on several weeks ago by OU and replaced with Thomas Hawkins. And, of course, how he stunk it up. And then now he's back. And, he kind of scared Ole Miss last week, 14-10 up at halftime. Yeah. And, man, when I saw that score, and now it looks like with Seth Luttrell gone, Jackson Arnold is going to finish out the season as the starting quarterback for OU. So kind of back to what everybody's been talking about on this show, the SEC is so crazy that, you've got to have two legit starting quarterbacks to make it through the season. And, I think OU, though, has really had trouble adjusting to the SEC. And I just don't think they can go back and forth. I mean, heck, it's going to be tight for them to make a bowl right now. Okay. I think they can win 2 more games, but it's going to be tight. So, I mean, Oklahoma has not enjoyed their road games at all. I mean, Texas has barely played any road games. I mean, here we are. They're going to play 2 more. They're going to play Kentucky and Florida, both in Austin. And then, of course, like you say, their last 2 away games are going to be Arkansas and A&M. Those have traditionally been back into the 19 teens, of 100 years ago, have been horrible, terrible places for Texas to play. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be in the new SEC. How it's going to work out. But I think it's going to be fun for the fans. That's for sure.
Yeah. Kevin?
Yeah, it's the fact that we could see 2 teams that have never been in the SEC championship game, A&M, and then Texas, because they've never had an opportunity before, is mind-boggling going into November. However, Georgia's sitting over there, like to remind everyone
that's right.
that they have the inside track because they have that win over Texas. Alabama has an extra loss, even though they have, and this is what bolsters Alabama's playoff resume, is they have that win over Georgia. So Alabama's probably not going to get to Atlanta, but Georgia's probably not going to lose again. So Georgia's going to be in one of those slots. And that brings up that, what we're seeing, guys, and I don't know what the answer to this is. First year that the SEC has not had divisions since 92, since they expanded back then to 12 teams. But these schedules are not balanced at all. A&M, for example, can get to Atlanta without having had to play Alabama or Georgia during their regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Texas had to play Georgia. Alabama had to play Georgia. Your schedule has so much to do with your ability to have a big season. And do you take advantage of it? And certainly A&M is taking advantage of it. They're not there yet. They've got some important games left, namely that November 30th showdown. But it's just really one of the issues with these mega conferences is you're going to have unbalanced schedules.
Yeah.
And you better be prepared to take advantage of it when the schedule rolls in your favor.
Yeah,
I agree with that. That's a brilliant point. Everybody in the first 2 years in the league plays either Texas or OU. They're going to hit everybody. But this league, in terms of what makes it better, it's always been the 2 and 3 guys on the depth chart. A lot of those guys now are checking out and hitting the portal. And I think that explains why there's so much parity around the country. Those guys aren't sticking around to be developed. You can go to the portal and get a skill player, a defensive back, but I'd say the most difficult thing I see is trying to build an offensive line out of the portal. You can't do that. You can't show up 3 days before the final exam in calculus and expect to pass the final exam. It's the consistency. Father Sachi said one time at Mass at St. Louis, don't just go shopping with prayers like you go to the grocery store. It's the consistency of prayer throughout every day of every
Amen.
day. And it's the grind. Y'all are both so good. That's what I respect so much about the writers, And I tell you what's caused texting Tony Barnhart yesterday, Mr. College Football. Love that guy. He goes down to Jacksonville for the Georgia-Florida game every year with a bunch of his college buddies. It's a tradition that they do. There's so many cool traditions. And Kevin, a couple of weeks ago, was, with his dad, couldn't make it. Or he's down there with his sons. That's what I love about this show. We got an awesome team of guys. And when y'all speak, you speak with so much credibility. And I'll close out by saying real quick before I close out with y'all, check out all of our sponsors at sidelines.live. Again, LandersFordMemphis.com. They're open at the corner of Houston Levy and Poplar Monday through Saturday. They're open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Service department opens up at 7 a.m. Huge inventory of vehicles out there. And if you go to the LandersFordMemphis.com, Brad Bellamy is the general manager. They will deliver anywhere. And Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. About 30 boxes a day of new stuff come in. Barber, Filson, Duckhead, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. They got the higher boots. They've got Stetson hats. They've got STS. They got Schaefer, Pendleton. You won't find a better store. And the Vitamin Shop, Olive Branch and Oxford. Both locations open every day of the week. I use this stuff it's a prebiotic. You put in your coffee in the morning. I use Shot Blocks. I use Goo. Proud to have the Vitamin Shop as a sponsor. So let's close out, guys. Ken, your prediction here in about a minute's time of how you think the SEC is going to end up based on the body of work to this point.
Boy, you're really putting me on. Yeah, it is. Well, I really can't. I'm not going to put something out there that I can't predict yet. I think it's all going to boil down to Texas. Georgia still having to play A&M, and Texas still having to play A&M. And it's either going. I will put it this way: it's either going to be A&M, Texas, or Georgia. One of those three teams in the SEC championship game playing each other.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, Georgia, I think, has not asserted its dominance, but it has shown itself to be, at this point, the best team in the conference. I think Texas has a chance to be that team if it closes strong. I think A&M as well. And I'll make this prediction. If Alabama beats LSU next Saturday, a week from Saturday, in Baton Rouge, they will be in the playoff.
Okay.
Yeah, like these bold predictions. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow morning. Jackie Sherrill's going to be at the Memphis Touchdown Club tonight. Looking forward to seeing him. He'll be on the show this Friday. He predicted it all in October of '92 at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. Super conferences, all this crazy stuff we got going on. But what a show. Buddy Martin pinch hitting today as our executive producer. He and Brendan never, ever fail. And look forward to hearing a lot about the Florida Panhandle. Buddy, I love this shirt. You remind me of a great coach on a TV show. And I'm going to tell you one thing. A flawless show, I might add. No errors, no runs, no drips, no errors. So thank you, buddy.
Flawless or lawless? I don't know. One of those words like that. Hey, thank you.
Both.
I just had this in my closet cleaning this morning. I put it on. I'm enjoying you guys. By the way, this is obviously a huge week, and it conjures up memories of, for us, some of us, the days. The reason they called it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, as I wrote in my column for tomorrow. I remember staying in the Roosevelt Hotel down in Jacksonville the night of the Florida Georgia game, and I remember waking up to 3:00 in the morning of pints and fizz of bourbon being broken against the wall by Georgia fans who usually had won the game. It's already. So there's a lot of memories about this, and we're starting to have a few of them these days, although it's such an incredible lopsided game. Remember, Florida once lost to Georgia 75-0 and 51-0. So we'll see. I don't think it'll be this bad this time. There's going to be interesting things that play out in this game, and it is going to be I think a competitive football game. Anyway, enjoy hearing you guys. And Rob, I'll see you on tomorrow night. And tonight we're going to have Tony Barnhart on our show, the Buddy Martin Show at 9 p.m. right here on the same network.
Yeah, and folks, watch this show. I mean, obviously they're going to talk a lot about Florida Gators, but they know the SEC, and you get a menu every night of great writers, all on this channel at the same every day of the week. You can find great shows on here. Everybody have a great day. God bless America. Thanks for watching. Thanks, buddy.
Amen.
Good night.
You bet. Good morning.